Welcome to What's the Deal with Sam? Starring Sam Lilly. Join Sam as he discusses a wide variety of topics.
Batman.
Now let's start the show.
Thank you.
What's the deal with corny versus cheesy? It's like spicy versus saucy with the ground. I'm gonna have to look at my notes. I had a lot of weird notes on this, and I can't keep everything in my head at once. There's a lot of stuff, okay? Especially when you're trying to ramble things at a camera in a mic that's maybe too far to the side. We'll see once the entire batch of things is edited, because that's a good idea, is to set up once and then hope that the whole batch is okay. What could go wrong? So my kind of my breakdown here is like, as far as like, you know, we're talking about like, especially kind of like with like, I don't know, like jokes and stuff or like pickup lines and whatnot. Like a lot of times when you're talking about like corny versus cheesy, I feel like a lot of times when you're talking about corny, something is like lame, but also kind of shallow. Like if it was like, this is a corny line, but if you throw out like a cheesy line, it's like, okay, like it's lame, but it's also kind of endearing. That's kind of my take on that, right? Like, I don't know. Is there something more to this that I'm missing? I really want to know, like, what you think of when you hear the words more so. Like, when you hear something as corny versus when you hear something as cheesy, like, is there a difference in your head, or are you using those, like, really interchangeably? You don't really have a different feeling about those. Because it's like, that's kind of a thing where it's like, I guess when you talk about a corny movie, it's not necessarily bad, but I feel like almost always it's used in a bad way. But if you're like, this is a cheesy movie, you kind of like, it almost feels like, yeah, it's cheesy, like it's kind of lame, but like you like it. Or if it's corny, you're like, it's kind of lame and I don't like it because of that. Like that's kind of the feeling I get for there too, right? But then like, I don't know, like there's also like the weird thing to consider with the words of like corn. There's the whole play on porn, that meme. You're like, oh, it's corny. Like I'm a corn star, right? And then it's like in that way for like corny, is it like porny? Like if I told like a really sexualized joke or something, it's like that's a corny joke. Would it work that way? I don't think people use the word that way, but could they? Could this become a thing? Whereas like cheesy, I just think of food for an alternative, right? You're like, cheesy potatoes. Cheesy, I don't know, like, other, like, food words we don't really use in general for these things either, right? Like, we use some, but we don't really use them the same way. Like, again, like, I don't know, like, something is, like, for the porn thing, like, you might say something is spicy or saucy. You might say somebody is beefy, or juicy, or, like, creamy. Is everything food porn? But, like, I wrote clammy with 3 knots. I don't know where I was going to go with that. I bet I had some idea of a joke. Nobody wants to be clammy. Nobody wants their porn talk to be clammy. Nobody's like, you know, nobody is in their porn thing being like, I love your clammy anything. That's not, nobody says it. No one's like, wow, this is a really clammy movie. You know? Just, you might talk about someone having a clam, right? But you would never, like, express clammy as a good thing, even if you liked the clam, right? So there's I don't know, that one, no one used clammy, okay? I'm vetoing clammy in the world. So I don't know, like I don't know, corny versus cheesy is the idea, and I really would like to see some comments if anybody actually gives a shit about something so stupid. So like, because I'm wondering, like, which one seems better to other people? Because obviously I kind of already have how I feel about the words, but I don't know in general how people feel about them, and I don't hear people use the words enough to know if they use them interchangeably or if they have a different connotation necessarily when they use them versus the way I use them and the few times I've heard them used. So really, look, do tell me. Cheesy versus corny. Leave me that. I almost said saucy. I almost said clammy. It's a lot of things I almost said there besides the real word I wanted to say. Can you imagine if they're like came out with like, Cheetos are like, oh, they're dangerously cheesy. If they came out with like a fucking corn chip and they're dangerously corny. I don't know what mascot will pull that off, but as long as they have sunglasses, I think they're pretty cool in my book.